Mother Wolf collapsed at the doorstep. What this baby did put everyone in shock. Let us know where you're watching from. The dawn broke slowly over Pine Ridge Valley, casting long shadows across the snow-dusted forest. 6-year-old Lily Morgan stood by the cabin window, her breath fogging the glass as she traced patterns with her small finger. Her Aunt Nora was still asleep, exhausted from the night shift at the Wildlife Research Station. They had been living in this remote cabin at the edge of Whispering Pines National Park for only 3 months, ever since the accident that had taken Lily's parents. The cabin creaked and settled in the morning cold. Lily liked these quiet moments when it felt like she was the only person awake in the world. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching a chickadee hop from branch to branch. The bird suddenly flew away as something moved at the tree line. Lily squinted, leaning closer to the window. A large gray form stumbled from between the pines. "A wolf," Lily whispered, her heart racing. The wolf was limping badly, its head hanging low as it dragged itself toward the cabin. Lily had seen wolves before, but only from a distance when her aunt pointed them out. This one was coming right to their door. The wolf collapsed halfway across the clearing, then struggled back to its feet, something dark dangling from its mouth. Lily's eyes widened. The wolf was carrying a pup, a tiny, limp body. The mother wolf staggered forward again, falling to her knees just steps from the cabin porch. A plaintive whine carried through the morning air, a sound so full of pain and desperation that Lily felt tears spring to her eyes. Without thinking, Lily pushed away from the window and ran to the door. She knew Aunt Nora would be angry. She had strict rules about wildlife. Never approach them, never feed them, never make them comfortable around humans. But the wolf was hurting. The baby wolf wasn't moving. Lily couldn't just watch. She unlocked the door, her small fingers fumbling with the heavy bolt. The cold air rushed in as she pushed it open, stealing her breath. The mother wolf's head jerked up, amber eyes locking with Lily's. The wolf's fur was matted with blood on one side, and her breathing came in ragged gasps. "It's okay," Lily whispered, stepping onto the porch. "I won't hurt you." The wolf growled, a low, warning rumble. Lily froze. Behind her, she heard Aunt Nora's startled cry, "Lily, get back inside now." But Lily couldn't move. The mother wolf had laid the pup gently on the ground and was staring at Lily with an intelligence that seemed impossible. The wolf's eyes held pain, fear, and something else, something that reminded Lily of her mother in the moments before the accident, when she had pushed Lily to safety as their car slid toward the guardrail. It was the look of a mother willing to die for her child. "She needs help," Lily said, her voice small but determined. "The baby isn't moving." Aunt Nora was on the porch now, her hand gripping Lily's shoulder. "Lily, this is dangerous. Wolves don't come to humans for—" The mother wolf whimpered and nudged the pup toward them with her nose. Blood dripped from a deep gash in her side, staining the snow crimson. The wolf sank down, her strength failing, but her eyes never left her pup. What happened next would be talked about throughout Pine Ridge Valley for years to come. Later, Aunt Nora would say it was the most terrifying and miraculous thing she had ever witnessed. Lily shrugged off her aunt's restraining hand and slowly, deliberately walked down the porch steps. The mother wolf's ears flattened, but she didn't growl again. "Lily!" Aunt Nora hissed, too afraid to shout. Lily knelt in the snow just feet from the injured wolf. She extended her small hand, palm up, the way she had seen her aunt do with the research station's rescue dogs. "It's okay," she whispered. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too, but I want to help your baby." The mother wolf's eyes seemed to search Lily's face. Then, in a movement so gentle it barely disturbed the snow, the wolf used the last of her strength to push her unmoving pup toward Lily's outstretched hand. Her eyes closed as she collapsed, her breathing shallow and labored. Lily carefully picked up the tiny wolf pup. It was cold and still, but when she cradled it against her chest, she felt the faintest flutter of a heartbeat. "Aunt Nora," she called, her voice breaking. "They're dying. Please help them." Nora Morgan stood frozen on the porch, unable to believe what she was seeing. In 15 years as a wildlife biologist, she had never witnessed anything like this. A wild wolf entrusting her pup to a human child. It defied everything she knew about wolf behavior. Yet the evidence was before her eyes. Her 6-year-old niece cradling a wolf pup, while its mother lay bleeding in the snow, having made a desperate choice that no wild animal should ever have to make. Time seemed to stand still in that moment. The only sounds were the soft whistling of the winter wind through the pines and the labored breathing of the mother wolf. Then something clicked in Nora's mind, the professional taking over from the stunned observer. She rushed down the steps, her medical training overriding her fear. "Lily, don't move," she instructed, her voice now calm and focused. "Keep holding the pup close to your body for warmth." Nora knelt beside the mother wolf, expecting her to lash out defensively even in her weakened state. But the wolf only watched her with those intelligent amber eyes, as if understanding that this human was trying to help. The wound on her side was deep, a jagged tear that looked suspiciously like it had been made by something other than animal claws or teeth. "Someone shot her," Nora whispered, gently probing around the wound. "And there's something else." Her fingers found a small metal object embedded in the wolf's flesh. "A tracking device? That's not one of ours." The wolf whimpered as Nora's fingers brushed against the foreign object. Suddenly, a distant sound caught their attention, the low rumble of approaching vehicles. "We need to get them inside, now," Nora said urgently. "Can you carry the pup, Lily?" Lily nodded, cradling the tiny wolf against her chest. "What about her mama?" Nora hesitated. The mother wolf was easily over 100 pounds, too heavy for her to carry alone. But leaving her out here, wounded and exposed, wasn't an option. As if understanding their dilemma, the wolf struggled to her feet, swaying dangerously. "She's trying to follow her baby," Lily whispered in awe. Nora quickly positioned herself on the wolf's injured side, providing support without actually touching her. "Come on, girl, just a few more steps." Together, they made a strange procession into the cabin. Lily leading with the pup, followed by the limping mother wolf with Nora beside her, ready to catch her if she fell. As they reached the door, the sound of vehicles grew louder. Once inside, Nora helped the mother wolf lie down on the rug by the wood stove, while Lily stood nearby, still holding the pup. Nora quickly gathered her emergency medical kit, the one she used for injured wildlife at the research station. "Who's coming?" Lily asked, peering anxiously out the window. "I don't know," Nora replied, her voice tight with concern. "But I don't think it's anyone from the research station. No one should be out this way today." Through the window, they watched as 2 black SUVs pulled up outside the cabin. 4 men emerged, dressed in dark clothing that wasn't quite a uniform, but had a distinctly official look. One of them carried what appeared to be a tracking device. "They're looking for the wolf," Nora realized. She turned to Lily. "Take the pup into my bedroom and close the door. Don't make a sound." "What about her mama?" Lily's eyes were wide with fear. Nora looked at the injured wolf, who was watching the proceedings with alert eyes despite her weakened state. "I'll handle this. Go now, quickly." As Lily disappeared into the bedroom with the pup, Nora draped a blanket over the mother wolf, partially concealing her from immediate view. Then she went to the door, opening it just as one of the men was about to knock. "Can I help you?" she asked, blocking the entrance. The man in front flashed a badge too quickly for Nora to identify it properly. "Department of Wildlife Management. We're tracking a dangerous wolf that's been reported in this area." Nora frowned. "Department of Wildlife Management? There's no such department in the Park Service structure." The man's expression hardened. "It's a special task force, ma'am. We have authorization to search any premises where the target animal might be located." "I'd like to see that authorization," Nora replied coolly. "And your identification again, please." The tension was palpable as the man stared her down. Behind him, one of his colleagues spoke into a radio. "Signals coming from inside the cabin, sir." Nora's mind raced. She knew every legitimate wildlife researcher and park ranger in Whispering Pines. These men were strangers, and something about them set off alarm bells in her head. Their badges looked official, but the department they claimed to represent didn't exist. "I'm a senior wildlife biologist with the Whispering Pines Research Station," she said firmly. "Any operation involving wildlife in this park falls under our jurisdiction. I haven't been notified of any special task force." The leader's face darkened. "Ma'am, we don't need your permission. That wolf is dangerous and part of an ongoing investigation." Behind Nora, hidden by the blanket, the mother wolf let out a low growl. The man's hand moved toward his jacket, where Nora could see the outline of what looked like a holstered gun. "There are no dangerous wolves in this area," Nora insisted, her heart pounding. "Our research station monitors all the packs. If there were any concerns, we would be the first to know." "Step aside, ma'am," the man demanded. "We have reason to believe the animal was injured in a poaching incident and may be carrying evidence." The words struck Nora like a thunderbolt. Poaching? Evidence? Suddenly, the tracking device, the gunshot wound, and these mysterious officials made a terrible kind of sense. The wolf hadn't been shot by researchers or park rangers. She'd been shot by poachers and somehow acquired evidence that could identify them. Before Nora could respond, a small voice came from behind her. "Aunt Nora, the baby wolf is waking up." Lily had emerged from the bedroom, her eyes wide with excitement. She froze when she saw the men at the door. The pup in her arms squirmed and let out a tiny, plaintive howl. The leader's eyes locked onto the wolf pup. "That's park property, little girl. Hand it over." Lily clutched the pup tighter, backing away. "No, she needs her mama." The blanket-covered form on the floor suddenly surged upward as the mother wolf struggled to her feet, the blanket falling away. Despite her injury, she placed herself between the men and her pup. Teeth bared in a snarl that made the men step back involuntarily. "Jesus!" one of them exclaimed. "It's the Alpha!" The leader reached for his gun, but Nora moved faster than she thought possible, positioning herself in front of the wolf. "You are not shooting any animal in my home. Who are you people, really?" The standoff might have ended very differently if not for the sudden wail of actual Park Service sirens approaching from the distance. The leader hesitated, glancing back at his colleagues. "This isn't over," he muttered, backing toward their vehicles. "That wolf has something that belongs to us." As quickly as they had arrived, the men piled into their SUVs and drove away, leaving Nora, Lily, and the two wolves in a stunned silence that was broken only by the approaching sirens. How did the rangers know to come? Nora wondered aloud. Lily looked up from where she was kneeling beside the mother wolf, who had collapsed again after the intruders left. "I called them," she said simply. "When you told me to go to the bedroom with the baby wolf, I used your emergency radio. I remembered the channel from when you showed me. Nora stared at her niece in amazement. This child, who had lost so much, had just saved not only the wolves, but possibly their lives as well. Lily, that was... She struggled to find the words. That was incredibly brave. Lily shrugged, returning her attention to the mother wolf, who was now allowing her to stroke her fur gently. I promised I'd help her baby. That means helping her too. The mother wolf's amber eyes met Lily's, and in that moment, something passed between them. A connection that transcended the ancient barriers between human and wolf. It was as if the wolf recognized something in this small human. A kindred spirit who understood the fierce, protective love of the family. Outside, the real park rangers were pulling up, led by Nora's colleague and friend, Ranger Jackson Reed. Nora went to the door to explain the situation, but her thoughts remained with Lily and the wolves. The tracking device in the mother wolf's wound, the mysterious men claiming to be from a non-existent department, the mention of poaching and evidence, it all pointed to something far more sinister happening in Whispering Pines National Park. As she watched Lily tend to the wolves with a gentleness that belied her young age, Nora knew that their lives had just become far more complicated and dangerous than she could have imagined. The mother wolf hadn't just stumbled upon their cabin by chance. She had chosen them, trusted them. And now, whatever secrets she carried had become their responsibility as well. "Nora, what the hell is going on?" Jackson demanded as he strode up to the cabin, his hand resting cautiously on his sidearm. "Lily's message said something about fake rangers and an injured wolf?" Nora opened her mouth to answer but was interrupted by a sharp cry from inside the cabin. She spun around to see Lily backing away from the mother wolf, her hands covered in blood. "Aunt Nora, something fell out of her wound." Jackson followed Nora as she rushed back inside. There, on the floor beside the panting wolf, lay a small, blood-covered object. A tiny camera or recording device of some kind. "What in the world?" Jackson murmured, crouching to examine it without touching it. The mother wolf's eyes were fixed on the device, then on Lily, as if trying to communicate something of vital importance. Her message delivered, she laid her head down, exhaustion finally overtaking her. "This isn't just about poaching, is it?" Nora said quietly to Jackson. "This is something bigger." Jackson's expression was grim as he nodded. "Much bigger. And if those men come back, they won't be pretending to be wildlife officials next time." Lily had moved to sit between the mother wolf and her pup, one hand gently stroking each of them. "We have to protect them," she said with the simple certainty of a child. "They came to us for help." Nora and Jackson exchanged looks over Lily's head. The girl had already lost her parents. Nora couldn't bear the thought of her being in danger again, but as she watched her niece with the wolves, she knew there was no sending them away, no pretending this hadn't happened. "Yes," Nora agreed softly. "They did, and we will." Outside, the winter day was brightening, the sun breaking through the clouds to cast long shadows across the snow. But inside the cabin, lives that should never have intersected, a child, a wildlife biologist, a park ranger, and two wolves, had become irrevocably entwined by forces none of them yet understood. And somewhere in the vast wilderness of Whispering Pines, the men in the black SUVs were already planning their return. The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity. Jackson called in Dr. Elena Vasquez, the park's veterinarian, who arrived within the hour, her medical bag in hand and concern etched on her face. Elena had worked with Nora for years, studying the park's wolf population, but even she was stunned by what she found inside the cabin. "I've never seen anything like this," Elena murmured as she examined the mother wolf, who allowed the examination with surprising patience. a wild alpha female permitting such handling. It's unprecedented. Lily hadn't left the wolf's side, sitting cross-legged on the floor with the pup now sleeping in her lap. The tiny creature had warmed up and taken some diluted milk from a dropper that Nora had prepared. The pup seems undernourished, but otherwise healthy, Elena reported after checking the baby wolf. But the mother... She shook her head grimly. The gunshot wound is infected, and she's lost a lot of blood. And this tracking device was embedded deeply, not attached to a collar like our research tags. Jackson had carefully bagged the blood-covered recording device that had fallen from the wolf's wound. "I'm taking this to the forensics lab in Riverdale," he said. "But we need to be careful. If those men have connections within the Park Service—" "You think they do?" Nora asked, keeping her voice low so Lily wouldn't hear. Jackson's expression was grim. They knew exactly where to look for the wolf, and that tracking technology isn't something civilians can easily get their hands on. Elena finished bandaging the mother wolf's wound. "She needs antibiotics and rest. Normally, I'd say we should transfer her to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, but if those men really are connected to the Park Service, she wouldn't be safe there." Nora finished the thought. "What about the cabin across Pine Ridge?" Jackson suggested. "The old ranger station?" "It's been abandoned since they built the new facilities, but it's still structurally sound." Nora considered this. "It's isolated, hard to find if you don't know it's there, but how would we move her?" "My truck has a covered bed," Elena offered. "We could transport her safely." As the adults discussed their options, Lily spoke up, her voice small but determined. "She came to us for help. We can't send her away." The three adults exchanged glances. Lily had formed an inexplicable bond with these wolves, especially the mother. Separating them now seemed not only logistically challenging but potentially traumatic for both the child and the animals. "Lily," Nora began gently, "it might be safer for the wolves if—" She was interrupted by a soft scratching at the door. Everyone froze. Jackson motioned for them to stay back as he moved cautiously toward the entrance, his hand on his sidearm. He peered through the peephole, then turned back to them with an expression of disbelief. "There's another wolf on the porch." Before anyone could stop her, Lily was on her feet, carefully setting the pup beside its mother and rushing to the window. "It's her pack! They found her!" Sure enough, a large male wolf stood on the porch, his posture alert but not aggressive. Behind him, at the edge of the clearing, 3 more wolves waited, partially concealed by the trees. The mother wolf lifted her head, her ears perking up at the sight of her packmate. She attempted to rise but was too weak, collapsing back onto the rug with a whimper that caused the male outside to paw anxiously at the door. "This is extraordinary," Elena whispered. Pack behavior doesn't typically include seeking out humans or approaching human dwellings, even when a pack member is missing. Lily looked up at Nora, her eyes pleading. "They want to help her, too. Can we let them see her?" "Absolutely not," Jackson said firmly. "These are wild predators, Lily. The mother wolf is one thing. She's injured and came to us. But inviting a whole pack inside is—" "Not the whole pack," Lily argued. "Just him. He's worried about her." Look, Nora was beyond questioning the strange intelligence of these wolves. "Let him out. Jackson, you head to the north entrance. Buy us time to get everyone relocated." "Be careful," Jackson warned as he prepared to leave. "And keep your radio on. If anything seems off about the old ranger station, anything at all, you get out of there immediately." As Jackson departed for the north entrance, Nora, Elena, and Lily carefully loaded the mother wolf and pup into the covered bed of Elena's truck. The male wolf, once released, rejoined his pack at the tree line. To their amazement, as Elena's truck began moving slowly down the forest service road, the wolf pack followed at a distance, keeping pace through the trees. "They're escorting us," Elena remarked, watching through the rearview mirror. Lily sat in the back seat, periodically checking on the mother wolf and pup through a small window into the truck bed. "They know we're helping," she said with the simple confidence of a child. "They trust us." Nora wasn't so sure if trust was the right word. Necessity, perhaps. These wolves had made a calculated decision to seek human assistance in a desperate situation. But why her cabin specifically? How had the mother wolf known to come there? The old ranger station came into view as they rounded a bend in the road, a sturdy log structure nestled among towering pines, with a small clearing in front and a stream running nearby. It looked undisturbed, just as it had been since the Park Service relocated its operations 3 years ago. "It's perfect," Elena said as she parked. "Isolated but accessible, and there's the old radio equipment inside if we need to communicate." They carefully transferred the mother wolf and pup into the cabin, setting them up on a pile of old blankets they found in a storage closet. The wolf pack materialized from the trees, maintaining a respectful distance but clearly intending to stay nearby. As Nora set up the cabin's generator to provide electricity and heat, her mind raced with questions. The memory card, the mysterious men, the unnatural behavior of the wolves. None of it made sense individually, but together it painted a picture of something far more complex than simple poaching. "Aunt Nora," Lily called from where she sat beside the wolves. "I found something." Nora turned to see her niece carefully examining the mother wolf's ear, which bore a small notch. Not unusual for wild wolves who often sustained minor injuries in fights or while hunting. "There's a mark inside the notch," Lily said, pointing, "like a tiny tattoo." Elena moved closer to look. "She's right, it's a number 47. "A research identification?" Nora suggested. Elena shook her head. "Not from any program I'm familiar with, and we don't tattoo wolves in our studies. We use radio collars or microchips." The male wolf, who had been allowed into the cabin while the rest of the pack remained outside, suddenly grew alert, his ears pricking up at some sound inaudible to human ears. He moved to the window, looking out intently. "What is it?" Lily asked, as if expecting the wolf to answer. A moment later, they heard it too, the distant sound of an approaching helicopter. "That's not Park Service," Elena said, her expression darkening. "Their choppers are all at the southern station for maintenance this week." Nora quickly turned off the generator and doused the lights. "Get down, away from the windows." The helicopter grew louder, its searchlight sweeping through the trees as it passed overhead. They held their breath, crouched on the floor. The mother wolf remained still, but her eyes were open and alert. The male wolf stood rigidly by the window, hackles raised. The searchlight passed over the cabin once, twice, then moved on as the helicopter continued its path across the forest. They waited in tense silence until the sound faded completely. "They're searching the whole area," Nora whispered. "How are they devoting these kinds of resources to finding one wolf?" "Unless it's not about the wolf," Elena said slowly, "but about what she's carrying or what she's seen." Lily, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. "I know why she came to us." The adults turned to look at the child, who was stroking the mother wolf's head with gentle fingers. "What do you mean, Lily?" Nora asked. "Remember the picture in your study? The one with you and the wolf cubs from 3 years ago?" Lily pointed to the notch in the mother wolf's ear. "She has the same mark as the cub you're holding in that picture. She remembers you, Aunt Nora. You helped her before." Nora felt a chill run down her spine as the memory surfaced. 3 years ago, she had been part of a rescue operation after an illegal hunting cabin was discovered in the park. They had found 3 wolf cubs, barely weaned, their mother killed by the hunters. Nora had helped rehabilitate the cubs before releasing them back into the wild. "That's impossible," she whispered, even as she moved closer to examine the wolf. The statistical probability of one of those cubs not only surviving to adulthood, but remembering human faces and locations after 3 years. And yet, as she looked into the wolf's amber eyes, she saw recognition there, an impossible, inexplicable awareness. She came back to the only humans who ever helped her, Lily said simply, because she needed help again. Elena was already pulling out her tablet, searching through old research files. If she's one of those cubs, she'd be part of what we called the border pack. They range along the northern boundary of the park, right where it meets private land. "Land owned by whom?" Nora asked, a suspicion forming. Elena's expression grew grim as she found the information. Most of it was federal wilderness until 2 years ago. Then a large section was quietly sold to Northridge Mining Corporation. Northridge, Nora repeated, the name triggering a memory. They've been lobbying to relax environmental protections in the region. Something about rare earth minerals essential for technology manufacturing. "The memory card," Elena said suddenly. "What if it contains evidence of illegal mining activity inside park boundaries, or worse?" The male wolf growled softly, moving away from the window and positioning himself protectively near the mother and pup. Outside, the rest of the pack began to howl, a warning call that echoed through the trees. "Someone's coming," Lily whispered. Nora moved quickly to the window, peering cautiously through the edge of the curtain. In the dim moonlight, she could make out shadows moving between the trees, human figures approaching stealthily from multiple directions. "They found us," she breathed. "But how?" "We disabled the tracking device. Unless there's another one," Elena said, glancing at the wolves. The mother wolf struggled to her feet despite her injury, standing protectively over her pup. The male wolf moved to Lily's side, nudging her toward the back of the cabin. "He wants us to go out the back," Lily said with certainty. Nora made a split-second decision. "Elena, take Lily and the pup. Follow the wolf. The pack will protect you." "What about you?" Elena demanded. "And the mother wolf?" "She can't move fast enough in her condition," Nora replied. "We'd slow you down. I'll stay with her and create a diversion." "No," Lily protested. "We can't leave you and her mama." Nora knelt in front of her niece. "Listen to me, Lily. Those wolves trust you in a way they'd never trust me or Elena. They need you to keep their pups safe. Can you do that?" Tears welled in Lily's eyes, but she nodded bravely. "Like her mama is doing for her." "Exactly," Nora said, hugging her tightly. "I'll be right behind you as soon as I can. Take my emergency beacon. If you get to high ground, activate it. The real park rangers will come." As Elena prepared to leave with Lily and the wolf pup, the male wolf paced anxiously between them and the back door, clearly urging them to hurry. Outside, the other wolves had positioned themselves in the trees, ready to escort the fleeing group. "Go," Nora urged. "Now, before they surround the cabin completely." With one last anguished look, Elena took Lily's hand and, carrying the wolf pup wrapped in a blanket, slipped out the back door into the darkness. The male wolf followed, pausing only briefly to look back at his injured packmate. Left alone with the mother wolf, Nora moved to the front window again. The shadowy figures were closing in, moving with the precision of military training rather than the caution of park rangers. These were professionals, likely mercenaries hired by whoever was behind the mining operation. The mother wolf limped to Nora's side, her amber eyes fixed on the approaching threat. Despite her weakness, she growled low in her throat, a sound of defiance, not fear. "You and me against them, huh?" Nora whispered, resting her hand lightly on the wolf's back. "Let's hope Jackson figured out what's on that memory card in time." Outside, a voice called through a megaphone. "Dr. Morgan, we know you're in there. You have something that belongs to us. Come out with the wolf, and no one needs to get hurt." Nora took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The mother wolf pressed against her leg, as if offering strength. In that moment, Nora understood what had drawn this remarkable creature to her door. Not just memory or desperation, but a recognition of shared purpose. They were both mothers in their way, fighting to protect not just those they loved, but something larger than themselves. "Let's show them what happens when they threaten our pack," Nora murmured to the wolf. She reached for the old ranger station's radio equipment, hoping it still functioned after years of disuse. If she could broadcast on the emergency channel, there was a chance help would arrive before it was too late. "You want me to follow you?" Nora asked in disbelief. The wolf released her sleeve and moved ahead a few paces, looking back expectantly. Making a split-second decision to trust this remarkable creature, Nora followed. The wolf led her through a narrow passage between two large boulders that Nora would have missed entirely in the darkness. The passage opened into a small sheltered hollow, protected on 3 sides by rock and screened on the 4th by dense evergreens. It was a perfect hiding place, invisible from more than a few feet away. "How did you know about this?" Nora whispered as they crouched together in the hollow, listening to their pursuers crashing through the forest nearby. The wolf simply gazed at her with those intelligent amber eyes, then settled painfully onto her side, the exertion of their escape clearly having taken a toll on her injured body. Nora checked the bandage on the wolf's wound. It had held, but a fresh spot of blood was seeping through. "You've reopened your wound," she said softly. "We need to keep you still now." The sound of pursuit grew fainter as the men moved in the wrong direction, their voices echoing with frustration. For the moment, at least, they were safe. Nora took the opportunity to examine the USB drive she'd found. It was standard issue for the Park Service, but someone had etched a small symbol into its plastic casing, a simplified wolf's head. The significance wasn't lost on Nora. Someone in the Park Service had been collecting evidence, hiding it for safekeeping, and marking it with a symbol that declared their allegiance to the wolf's protection. But who? And how had the mother wolf known where to find it? As if reading her thoughts, the wolf raised her head slightly, her ears pricking up at some distant sound inaudible to human ears. A moment later, Nora heard it too. Not the crude crashing of their pursuers, but the deliberate, quiet movement of something else approaching their hiding place. Nora tensed, ready to fight or flee, but the mother wolf remained calm. A shadow fell across the entrance to their hollow, and then a familiar face appeared. The male wolf who had been escorting Elena and Lily. "You came back," Nora breathed in astonishment. The male wolf approached cautiously, nuzzling the injured female before turning his attention to Nora. In his mouth, he carried something that made Nora's heart skip a beat. Lily's blue hair ribbon. The child never went anywhere without it. It had been a gift from her mother before she died. "Lily," Nora gasped, taking the ribbon with trembling fingers. "Is she in trouble?" The male wolf backed toward the entrance to their hiding place, looking at her expectantly. "You want me to follow you to her?" Nora guessed, already rising to her feet. The mother wolf struggled to rise as well, but Nora gently pressed her back down. "No, you need to rest. You've done more than enough." But the injured wolf was insistent, forcing herself upright despite obvious pain. These wolves, Nora was beginning to understand, shared a devotion to their pack that transcended even their own welfare. "All right," she relented. But slowly. With the male wolf leading and Nora supporting the injured female, they made their way carefully through the forest. The male chose a path that kept them concealed, following streams to mask their scent, using fallen logs as bridges, and pausing frequently to listen for pursuit. It was as if he understood not only that they were being hunted, but the tactics their hunters would use. After nearly an hour of difficult travel, they reached the base of a steep ridge. The male wolf led them to what appeared to be a solid rock face covered in hanging vines. He pushed through the vines, revealing a narrow opening, the entrance to a small cave. Inside, the sight that greeted Nora stole her breath away. Elena was there, applying a compress to her own bleeding arm. Lily sat in the center of the cave, completely surrounded by wolves, not just the pup she'd been carrying, but 3 adolescent wolves as well. The young wolves were curled protectively around the child, who was calmly stroking their fur as if being in the midst of wild predators was the most natural thing in the world. "Aunt Nora!" Lily cried out when she saw them. The wolves parted to let her run to her aunt, who enveloped her in a fierce hug. "What happened to Elena?" Nora asked, noticing the blood-stained bandage on her colleague's arm. "One of those men caught up to us," Elena explained grimly. "But before he could do anything, the wolves—" She paused, still processing what she had witnessed. "They protected us, Nora. Deliberately, strategically. They formed a circle around Lily and the pup, while 2 others led the man away from us, then ambushed him." "Are you saying the wolves attacked the man?" Nora asked, horrified at the implications. If the wolves had injured or killed a human, even in defense of humans they were protecting, it would give their enemies all the justification they needed to eliminate the entire pack. "No," Elena said, understanding Nora's concern. "That's what's so remarkable. They disarmed him. One wolf knocked him down while another actually grabbed his weapon and carried it away. They harassed him until he fled, but they didn't seriously harm him." "That's impossible," Nora whispered, even as she watched the mother wolf reunite with her pup, nuzzling it tenderly while the other wolves greeted her with obvious relief. "I would have said the same thing yesterday," Elena agreed. "But I saw it with my own eyes. These wolves are displaying behavior that defies everything we know about wolf cognition and social structures." Lily, who had been listening to their conversation, spoke up. "They're special wolves," she said simply. "They understand things." Nora knelt beside her niece. "Lily, what do you mean? How do you know they understand?" The little girl shrugged. "They talk to me, not with words, but—" She frowned, struggling to articulate something beyond her childish vocabulary. "They show me pictures in my head." Elena and Nora exchanged concerned glances. Was Lily's trauma, losing her parents, being thrust into a dangerous situation, causing her to imagine a connection with these animals? Before they could pursue this concerning thought, the male wolf who had led Nora to the cave suddenly stiffened, his attention fixed on something outside. The other adult wolves immediately responded, moving into defensive positions around the humans and wolf pup. "They're coming," Lily whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Sure enough, moments later they heard voices approaching, not the random searching of before, but the confident movement of people who knew exactly where they were headed. "How did they find us?" Elena whispered. The answer came in the form of a small blinking light, visible on the collar of one of the adolescent wolves. a tracking device similar to the one that had been embedded in the mother wolf's wound. They've tagged more of the pack, Nora realized with growing horror. But when? How? It doesn't matter now, Elena said, her voice tight with fear. We're trapped in here. The mother wolf, despite her weakened state, moved to the entrance of the cave, positioning herself defensively. The male and 2 other adult wolves joined her, forming a living barrier. But against armed men, what chance did they have? Nora felt the weight of the USB drive in her pocket. Whatever evidence it contained about Northridge Mining's illegal activities, it wasn't worth the lives of her niece, her colleague, or these extraordinary wolves. I'll go out, she decided. I'll give them what they want in exchange for letting the rest of you go. No, Lily cried, clutching her aunt's arm. They'll hurt you. And they'll kill the wolves, Elena added grimly. These men aren't here just for the evidence. They're here to eliminate witnesses, all witnesses. The voices outside grew louder. Flashlight beams swept across the vines, concealing the cave entrance. They were out of time and options. Then, from somewhere in the distance, came the unmistakable wail of sirens. The men outside paused in their approach. Radio static crackled, followed by a voice too distant to make out clearly. More radio chatter, the tone urgent. The flashlight beams disappeared as the men retreated, their footsteps fading rapidly into the forest. What's happening? Elena whispered. Nora moved cautiously to the cave entrance, peering through the vines. In the valley below, blue and red emergency lights were visible on the main park road. Lots of them. Reinforcements, she breathed. But who called them? The answer came in the form of Jackson's voice crackling over the emergency radio Elena had been carrying. Nora, Elena, if you can hear me, respond. This is Ranger Reed with a full federal task force. I repeat, we have federal agents on site. Elena fumbled for the radio. Jackson, we're here, in a cave on the North Ridge. How did you find us? Your emergency beacon activated about an hour ago, Jackson's relieved voice replied. But there's more. I checked that memory card and the recording device. Nora, you're not going to believe what's on them. Try me, Nora said, taking the radio from Elena. Evidence of a massive, illegal, rare earth mining operation inside park boundaries, Jackson explained. Northridge has been using shell companies to buy up land around the park, then tunneling underneath the protected areas. The memory card contains survey maps, financial records, even internal emails discussing how to cover it up. But how did the wolves get involved? Nora asked, watching as the mother wolf nursed her pup, the other wolves still standing vigilant at the cave entrance. That's where it gets strange, Jackson admitted. The recording device has video footage of men in Northridge uniforms shooting wolves and removing tracking devices from their bodies, but not our research collars. These are different devices, smaller, more advanced. Someone was using the wolves to map the park, Nora realized, tracking their movements to identify patrol patterns and unmonitored areas. Exactly. But here's the kicker. Whoever planted that memory card on the wolf did it deliberately. The footage shows a park ranger sedating the wolf, placing the card in a small pouch, and attaching it under her fur near an existing wound. They wanted the evidence found, but they needed to get it out of the park undetected. An inside informant, Elena murmured, using the wolves as couriers. But that still doesn't explain how the mother wolf knew to come to our cabin specifically, Nora said, or how these wolves are behaving so unnaturally. Lily, who had been listening quietly while petting the wolf pup, spoke up again. They're not just regular wolves, Aunt Nora, they're different. Special. Something in her niece's tone made Nora pay closer attention. Different how, Lily? The little girl looked up, her eyes meeting Nora's with an intensity that seemed beyond her years. "Remember those science books you showed me? About animals that get changed to be smarter? I think someone did that to these wolves." "Genetic modification," Elena breathed, the implication dawning on her. "It's not just mining that Northridge is doing illegally in the park." The mother wolf's amber eyes seemed to confirm this shocking theory, watching the humans with an intelligence that suddenly had a potential explanation, albeit an ethically horrifying one. "Jackson," Nora said into the radio, "we need a secure medical transport for injured wolves and a full biohazard containment protocol. I think we're dealing with more than just illegal mining." "Already on it," Jackson replied. "The FBI has a special bioethics division on the way. Stay put, we'll come to you." As they waited for rescue, Nora sat beside the mother wolf, gently checking her bandages. The wolf watched her work with those knowing eyes, then deliberately placed a paw on Nora's hand, a gesture so human-like that it sent chills down Nora's spine. "What did they do to you?" Nora whispered. "And why?" The answers would come later, after their rescue, after the FBI's raid on Northridge Mining's hidden laboratory beneath an abandoned hunting lodge at the park's edge. There, they would discover the truth. A classified military-industrial project using genetic modification techniques to enhance wolf intelligence, aiming to create the ultimate surveillance and tracking animals for deployment in conflict zones. But the scientists had succeeded too well. The modified wolves, with their enhanced cognition, had developed a moral sense, an understanding of right and wrong that their creators hadn't anticipated. When they witnessed the environmental destruction being wrought by the mining operation, they had chosen sides, not with the humans who had altered them, but with the forest that was their true home. Days later, as Nora sat in a secure government facility watching Lily interact with the mother wolf through a glass partition, the authorities still unsure how to proceed with these unprecedented creatures, she marveled at the bond between them. The wolf that had collapsed at their doorstep had done more than seek help for her pup. She had chosen to trust a human child with evidence that could save her entire pack, and perhaps the park itself. "She knew," Lily said, looking up from where she sat cross-legged beside the glass, the wolf mirroring her position on the other side. "She knew I would understand." "Understand what, sweetheart?" Nora asked gently. "That moms will do anything to protect their babies," Lily replied simply. "Just like my mom did for me. Just like you're doing for me now." Nora felt tears spring to her eyes as she watched the mother wolf press her paw against the glass, directly over Lily's small hand on the other side. In that gesture was a communication more profound than words, an acknowledgement of shared purpose that transcended species. The wolf had collapsed at their doorstep, carrying not just her injured pup, but a message about what it truly meant to protect those who could not protect themselves. What this baby had done, reaching across the ancient divide between human and wolf with instinctive compassion, had indeed put everyone in shock. But perhaps more shocking still was the discovery that the capacity for moral courage existed not just in humans, but in the hearts of creatures we had always considered mere animals. As the investigation into Northridge mining expanded, revealing a web of corruption that reached into the highest levels of the Park Service and state government, Nora began to understand the true significance of what had happened. The wolves, with their genetically enhanced intelligence, could have chosen to flee into the deepest parts of the wilderness, avoiding humans entirely. Instead, they had made a different choice: to reach out, to trust, to form an alliance. "What will happen to them now?" Lily asked as they left the facility that evening, the future of the wolves still uncertain as government agencies debated their status. Were they wildlife, experimental subjects, or something entirely new under the law. Nora took her niece's hand, thinking of the USB drive that had been found in the ranger station, the one the mother wolf had deliberately revealed to her. Analysis had shown it contained not just additional evidence of Northridge's crimes, but something far more significant: the complete genetic sequencing of the modified wolves, along with research notes documenting their enhanced cognitive abilities, problem-solving skills, and emotional intelligence. "I don't know for sure," Nora admitted, "but I promise you this: I won't let them be treated as just experiments. They've proven they're much more than that." What she didn't tell Lily was about the late-night call she'd received from Dr. Eleanor Chen, the renowned geneticist who had been brought in to evaluate the wolves. Dr. Chen had been both horrified and fascinated by what she found. "These modifications are incredible, Doctor." "Morgan," she had said, her voice hushed with a mixture of scientific awe and ethical concern, "the enhancements to their prefrontal cortex, the increased neural connectivity, but what's truly remarkable is that these changes appear to be heritable. The pup shows the same genetic markers, despite being born in the wild." "What are you saying?" Nora had asked, though she already suspected the answer. "I'm saying that what Northridge created isn't just a group of modified individual wolves. They've potentially created a new subspecies, one that can pass these traits to their offspring. And based on our cognitive tests, these animals are operating at a level of intelligence somewhere between great apes and human children." The implications were staggering. If what Dr. Chen said was true, then the mother wolf hadn't just been acting on enhanced instinct when she sought out Nora's cabin. She had been making a calculated decision, weighing risks and benefits, possibly even understanding the concept of evidence and justice in some fundamental way. As they drove home from the facility, Lily quiet and thoughtful beside her, Nora wondered what the future held. The mining operation had been shut down, the corrupt officials arrested, and the environmental damage would, in time, be repaired. But what about the wolves? Would they be confined to government facilities for study, released back into the wild? Could creatures with such enhanced intelligence ever truly return to a natural existence? The answer came 2 weeks later, in the form of a special congressional subcommittee hearing on modified wildlife in protected lands. Nora had been called to testify, along with various scientists, ethicists, and government officials. The debate had been heated. Some argued that the wolves posed a potential public safety risk and should remain in captivity. Others suggested they be relocated to a remote, monitored preserve. The Northridge executives, now facing charges, insisted the wolves were corporate property, patented organisms representing billions in research investment. When it was Nora's turn to speak, she had taken a deep breath and looked directly at the committee members. "These wolves came to humans when they needed help, but not just any humans," she had testified. "They specifically sought out those they believed would understand their plight and act with compassion. They made moral choices, demonstrated strategic thinking, and showed remarkable restraint even when threatened. The question before us isn't what to do with these animals. The question is, at what point does an animal with these capabilities deserve to be treated as more than property, as a being with inherent rights?" The room had fallen silent. Then, from the back, a small voice had spoken up. "They just want to go home." All heads had turned to see Lily, who had insisted on accompanying her aunt to the hearing. She stood now, small but determined. "Lily," Nora had begun, embarrassed by the interruption, but the committee chairwoman had raised her hand. "Let the child speak," she said, her eyes kind but assessing. "After all, she's the one who first earned the wolves' trust." Lily had walked forward, clutching something in her hand. the blue ribbon the male wolf had brought to Nora in the forest, now somewhat tattered. "The wolves are smart, but they're still wolves," she said simply. "They want to be with their pack, in their forest. They don't want to hurt anyone. They just want to protect their home from bad people." She paused, looking around at the adults with a child's innocent conviction. "And they promised they'd stay away from humans if we let them go back." "Promised," the chairwoman had repeated, a note of indulgent amusement in her voice. "How do you know that, young lady?" Lily had touched her temple. "They show me pictures. Here, the mother wolf showed me their den, deep in the park where no people go. She showed me how they'd stay there, keep watch over the park, but stay hidden." The adults had exchanged skeptical glances, most assuming this was merely a child's imagination or wishful thinking. But Dr. Chen had leaned forward, her expression intensely interested. "Telepathic communication wasn't part of the documented modifications," she murmured to Nora. "But neural enhancements can produce unexpected results, especially in conjunction with the remarkably plastic brains of children." The committee had ultimately reached a compromise decision. The wolves would be released back into the most remote section of the park, fitted with advanced monitoring devices, with strict protocols for intervention if they ever approached human settlements. The mother wolf's pup would remain in a special research facility until old enough to survive in the wild, then join its pack. What no one officially acknowledged was Lily's claim of mental communication with the wolves. It was dismissed as the fantasy of a traumatized child, easier to explain away than to incorporate into scientific understanding or legal frameworks. But on the day the wolves were released, Nora witnessed something that made her question her own scientific skepticism. As the crates were opened and the wolves bounded free, the mother wolf had paused, turning back to look directly at Lily. The child had stood very still, a small smile spreading across her face. Then she had nodded, as if in response to an unspoken question. The wolf had seemed to nod back before disappearing into the forest with her pack. "What did she say to you?" Nora had asked quietly as they walked back to their vehicle. Lily had looked up, her expression peaceful for the first time since her parents' deaths. "She said they'll always remember us, and that sometimes when the moon is full, they'll come to the ridge near our cabin just to check on us." She squeezed Nora's hand. "She said we're part of their pack now, too." Scientific rationality told Nora this was impossible. Wolves couldn't form complex thoughts about future actions. They couldn't express gratitude or make promises. And they certainly couldn't communicate telepathically with human children. And yet, in the months that followed, as life gradually returned to something resembling normal, Nora would sometimes find Lily sitting on the cabin porch on full moon nights, gazing expectantly toward the ridge. And occasionally, just occasionally, the haunting howl of wolves would drift down from the heights, not the random howling of ordinary wolves, but a specific pattern, almost like a greeting. On those nights, Lily would smile that knowing smile and whisper into the darkness, "Good night, friends. Keep our forest safe." And somewhere in the vast wilderness of Whispering Pines National Park, a pack of wolves like no others kept their silent vigil, guardians of a secret alliance between species that had begun with a desperate mother collapsing at a doorstep and a child brave enough to answer.